No!
The Wailing was a South Korean horror film that came out in 2016. This is from the same director who did The Yellow Sea and The Chaser. It is set in a rural town in Korea where a series of killings and seemingly infectious disease that's been spreading. As our protagonist, a sleazy wimp of a policeman, tries to investigate the case, he realizes that his family might just be the next target. Now, if you're looking for another review of the film that praises it like it's the best horror film of the 2010s, this isn't it. I'm not going to do that because after seeing the overwhelmingly positive reviews online, I know I will be getting myself into some trouble by writing this review. So if you're still here and have some sort of faith in me, keep in mind I've only seen this movie once. My opinion might change over time. So starting with a block of text from the Bible, you immediately understand and get a sense that the Wailing is going to follow and be infused with some biblical subtext, and the film makes that quite clear as these images and dialogues are presented throughout. It depicts good versus bad, faith versus fate, and virtue versus evil. The feel of the world and how the actors are directed are very exact. The girl who plays the daughter in the film is very good here. It requires a lot from her, and she definitely earned it with every moment she brings to life. The filmmakers are very good at directing our attention. They are very good at keeping the mystery up until the very end, so they can manipulate the audience with some simple ideas like a few lines said by some of the characters. The 156-minute runtime is a huge advantage of showing you all these little corners of the town, setting up a lot of mysteries that will eventually come back into play in the final act. The prologue, now in retrospect, gained a lot more depth. The opening scene is incredible and is something that can be easily forgotten, especially after the lengthy runtime. The cinematography is also excellent. It was lensed by Hong-jin, I think that's how you pronounce it, the same DP that did Mother, Snowpiercer, and Parasite with Bong Joon-ho. So naturally the film is a blast to behold visually. The aspect ratio is 2:39, laying a lot longer to flesh out the surrounding of these characters. Some of the landscape shots padding the pacing of this thing are beautiful. This wide-lensed style of cinematography while keeping the camera closer to ground level at crucial moments in the story really make a lot of scenes feel more oppressive. It is also very interested in having the subjects very small in the shot and shooting through frames to make them feel trapped in an environment. Hong is definitely very good at movements and timing because a lot of his work relies on excellent timing. You see that in Parasite, you're gonna see it here. The Wailing incorporates several subgenres to create this big horror epic. It started off like a murder, mystery, and disaster film. It turned into a possession and exorcism film before turning into like a zombie and supernatural film. I think the change of tone worked pretty seamlessly. Everything blends together nicely to tell this one story. The first 40 minutes or so of the movie, while it's intriguing with the incidents and setup, there are a lot of explaining to do by the characters. That's not always a bad thing. Some stories required a lot of these, but in this case, I find it a bit abundant. Characters sitting down talking about what's going on where they can easily show us with a few imagery or even not disclose them at all, because I think the ending does the explaining better than the characters do. But I think the major issue, or I guess confusion, I have with The Wailing is the theme and how they decided to execute it. I'm gonna try my best not to spoil it. Like I said, The Wailing depicts virtue versus evil in a biblical parallel, actions versus consequences. There's a layer of xenophobia in this thing when a Japanese stranger moved into town, and the filmmakers really home in on that idea as we see how the locals interact with him. We see the main character being an irresponsible dude in the setup, and I'm not smart enough to know if the sex scene in the car is part of the whole theme they're going for, but I digress. I bring this up because the film at moments seems to treat sins like the root of all evil. Our main character is the example of that. Yet the opening scene and one of the dialogue shows that evil just sits and waits for whoever can take the bait. In The Wailing, evil is something that possesses people, where they don't have any control over no matter what. But narratively, this is a designing principle where I think The Wailing really dug its own grave here, because it is the perfect way to write dead people in your story without reason. And this specifically didn't work for me personally because the film set up a crime and murder mystery in the beginning, in which we're seeing the world through the lens of a policeman as he goes to crime scenes one after the other, where the question of who did it and why is introduced to the audience very early on. And in said genre, the genre of murder and crime mystery, what it does is that it gets you interested by having you ask the questions yourself. Who did it? and why. And as much as the film tries to normalize and rationalize it, the simple explanation of evil doesn't choose its victims goes far beyond a reasonable culprit. It presents our main group of characters as victims in a corrupted world, and bad things just happen upon them no matter what. So narratively, the main group of characters can be anyone in the world. There's not a specific reason why we're following our protagonist, because the world and the plot isn't spawning off from him personally within, and he's not created by the environment the film created from without. Plus, you can write people dead on demand without any extra thought. And I know you can say that it's more about faith in this movie, it's more about what you choose to believe. Yes, but it's not presented as something that is streamlined throughout. It's the same criticism I have towards some fantasy movies, Kubo and the Two Strings being the most recent one in my memory. It's easy to write in magic because you're writing in a world where anything is possible, and it's really easy to fall into the abyss of creating drama and logic out of thin air. So in a way, having the biggest playground makes a writer's job harder because you have to be very restrained. In this case, the magic in the Wailing is the supernatural element that came into play. And in a way, by showing you the cruel reality of that in this story, it subliminally has you side with evil, because a big chunk of the middle portion of this movie is our main character handling this problem very poorly. He is a policeman, not a very good one, but a policeman. You would think a person like him would probably exploit his authority for his own benefit, anything that resembles something a cop would do and could do, but he doesn't. There's not a compelling reason why he is a cop other than getting him ahead of the curve with the investigation. You can argue this irony in writing, right? Where, yeah, they're going for a policeman who's supposed to protect the public but can't protect his own daughter, but he is never presented as a policeman who does the former, so you can't convince me the latter. There's never a sense of unity. It very much feels like these events are happening to our protagonist individually, instead of the whole town going to panic mode because of these killings. There's never quite a transformation for the main character, maybe until the last few minutes. So for the majority of the runtime, we're following the same character the film set up in the beginning, this sleazy wimp of a policeman, even though some terrible things are happening to the world around him and it is really affecting him personally. It makes it a lot harder for me to emphasize with him. In the end, even with the eerie score and incredibly real hair and makeup work, the story and some of the decisions made here just isn't enough to uphold the film. It is a beautifully lensed film with some really good moments. Some of the parallel editing sequences are really mesmerizing, but the execution is something that leaves me a bit unsatisfied. I'm thinking a decent 3 on this one, which is usually the score that represents films that are mixed bags for me, and I think this one is under that category. What do you think?